These are three true stories submitted by people who work night shifts in offices, warehouses, and hospitals. All names have been changed for privacy. If you work nights yourself, you might want to keep the lights on for this one. Story number 1. Sarah worked as the sole night stalker at a large retail warehouse store on the outskirts of town. Her shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and for the most part, she was completely alone. The only other person on site was a security guard who stayed in a booth near the front entrance, monitoring the cameras. It was a Tuesday night, quiet, nothing unusual. Sarah was restocking shelves in the home goods section when she noticed something odd on the security radio she carried. A soft crackle, followed by what sounded like breathing. She figured it was interference and kept working. About 20 minutes later, she rounded the corner into aisle 12, kitchenware, and saw a man standing at the far end. He wasn't wearing a store uniform. He was just standing there, facing away from her, completely still. Sarah assumed he was a customer who'd wandered in before closing and gotten locked in by mistake. It happened occasionally. She called out, "Sir, we're closed. I can help you find the exit." He didn't move, didn't turn around, didn't respond. She radioed the security guard, asking him to check the cameras for aisle 12. There was a long pause. Then his voice came back, tense. "Sarah, aisle 12 is empty. I'm looking at it right now." She looked back toward the aisle. The man was gone. Not walking away. Gone. There was nowhere for him to go in the few seconds she'd looked down at her radio. The aisle was a dead end, with floor-to-ceiling shelving on both sides. The guard came to walk her through the rest of her shift. When they reviewed the footage afterward, the camera for aisle 12 showed the aisle completely empty the entire time. No man, not for a single frame. But Sarah swears to this day that she saw him. And for a split second before he vanished, she says he'd started to turn his head toward her. She put in her 2 weeks' notice the next morning. Story number 2. Marcus worked as a night nurse in the ICU of a mid-sized hospital. Night shifts in hospitals are strange by nature. The building empties out, the hallways go quiet, and the only sounds are monitors beeping and the occasional cart being wheeled somewhere. One night, he was assigned to check on a patient in room 4B, an elderly man who had passed away earlier that evening. Procedure required a final check before the body was moved to the morgue in the morning. Marcus walked in, did what he needed to do, and was about to leave when he heard the call button in the room activate. The call button was connected to the bed. The bed was empty, save for the body under the sheet. He assumed it was a malfunction. The button had likely just short-circuited or been bumped during the earlier procedures. He silenced it at the nurse's station and made a note to have maintenance check it in the morning. 20 minutes later, it went off again. This time, when Marcus walked back in to check, the temperature in the room felt noticeably colder than the hallway, enough that he mentioned it later to a coworker, who brushed it off as the AC vent being close to that bed. But there was something else. The sheet, which had been pulled up to cover the patient's face, was now pulled down to the chest. Marcus is not a superstitious person. He'd worked in hospitals for 6 years and had seen death more times than he could count. But he says that night was the only time in his career he refused to be alone in a patient room until his shift ended. He clocked out at 7 a.m. and he never took a room 4B assignment again. He'd trade shifts with coworkers rather than go back in. The official explanation, according to hospital maintenance, was a faulty call button circuit. They never had an explanation for the sheet. Story number 3. Jennifer worked night security for a corporate office building downtown, a 15-story tower that was completely vacant after 9 p.m., aside from her walking rounds every hour. Her job was simple: patrol each floor, check that doors were locked, make sure nothing was out of place. On the third night of her new job, she was doing her usual round on the 9th floor when she noticed a light on in one of the conference rooms, a room that had been dark on every previous round. She walked over, and through the glass wall, she could see someone sitting at the head of the conference table. A man in a dark suit, hands folded on the table, completely still, facing the door. She knocked, no response. She tried the door, unlocked. She opened it and said, "Sir, the building's closed for the night. I need to ask you to head out." He didn't move, didn't even seem to be breathing, she said. She took a step closer, and that's when he slowly turned his head to look directly at her. Not a friendly smile. She described it later as a smile like he knew something I didn't. Jennifer didn't wait to find out what happened next. She backed out of the room, closed the door, and radioed her supervisor immediately, requesting backup before continuing her rounds. When 2 other guards arrived and they opened the conference room together minutes later, it was completely empty. No exit besides the door they'd been watching. No stairwell access from that room. No way out. Building records showed no employee scheduled to be there. No badge swipes for that floor after 8 p.m. When she pulled up old maintenance logs out of curiosity a few weeks later, she found something unsettling. A note from years earlier mentioning a former employee who had died of a heart attack in that exact conference room during a late-night meeting. Jennifer still works security, but she requested a permanent transfer. She no longer works that building. If you've ever experienced something like this during a night shift, I want to hear about it. Leave your story in the comments or send it to the email in the description. It might be featured in a future video. Thanks for watching. See you in the dark.